Thank you all for sticking with me, particularly in these past 5 episodes about Memento Mori. Again, a term I mentioned in many, many other 820 episodes. But today and the past few days, we have emphasized and want to cite and give credit to Mr. Alan Watts. For the years and decades he presented to this world on sage, confident, humble approaches to that spiritual connection we all have. But again, what I say about resilience, that we already have this, but many of us have not taken the time to, 1, define it for ourselves, 2, to embrace it, and then 3, to share it with the ones we meet on our collectives and independent journeys. But let's continue with part 5 with Mr. Alan Watts on You Are Already Dead, and with his context of not dying as a final sentence, something we must revisit, get comfortable with, and with the other side of that coin, to live as we die each day and in each moment with a new, refreshed perspective on this grace we've all been afforded to, and we should take the time to appreciate and do the work to actualize it. So let's get forward with Mr. Alan Watts.
It appears to be a separate entity moving across the ocean's surface. But is it really separate? Is there a place where the wave ends and the ocean begins? Of course not. The wave is a form that the ocean takes, a pattern of movement within the larger body of water. The wave doesn't contain water. It is water moving in a particular way. It doesn't exist apart from the ocean. It is what the ocean is doing at that particular point in time and space. And when the wave subsides, does it die? In a sense, yes. That particular form disappears. But the water that composed it doesn't go anywhere. It simply returns to the ocean from which it was never really separate. Nothing is lost. Only the temporary pattern dissolves. This, I suggest, is a rather perfect metaphor for our own existence. You are not a separate entity moving through the universe. You are what the universe is doing at a particular point in space and time. You are not in the universe. You are the universe, taking a particular form for a while. And when this form dissolves, as all forms must, you don't go anywhere because there's nowhere to go. You simply return to the ocean of being from which you were never really separate. This is what the Upanishads are pointing to with the concept of Atman and Brahman, the individual self and the universal self. Not as 2 separate things, but as 2 perspectives on the same reality, just as the wave and the ocean are 2 ways of looking at the same water. So when we fear death, it's rather like a wave fearing its return to the ocean. It's a failure to recognize our true nature, our inseparability from the whole. It's a case of mistaken identity, of identifying with the temporary pattern rather than with the water itself. And this misidentification isn't just a philosophical error, it's the root of our existential anxiety. Because if you think you're just the wave, then of course you'll fear the moment when the wave subsides. But if you recognize yourself as the water, taking the form of a wave for a while, but never limited to that form, then what is there to fear? This isn't just poetic language, it's a direct pointing to the nature of reality. It's an invitation to look beneath the surface appearance of things to the underlying unity from which all forms arise and to which they return. It's an invitation to recognize that death has already happened to you countless times, and yet here you are, eternally renewed in the endless creativity of the cosmos. Now we come to the culmination of our exploration. What does it mean to truly understand, to fully recognize that death has already happened to you? What lies beyond the veil of this realization? You see, there's something rather extraordinary that happens when you stop seeing death as a future event to be avoided and start recognizing it as an integral part of your ongoing experience. Something shifts, not just intellectually, but in your very being. And that shift is nothing short of liberation. When you no longer feel the need to hold yourself together as a separate entity, a curious kind of freedom emerges. You're no longer compelled to defend a position that was never really tenable in the first place. You're no longer trying to be a noun in a universe of verbs. You're free to be the flowing, changing, transforming process that you always already are. This is what the Zen masters point to when they speak of dying before you die. Not physical death, but the death of the illusion of a separate self, the death of the ego as an isolated entity. And in that death, there's an extraordinary rebirth, not as a different or better self, but as reality itself, temporarily expressing as this unique pattern that we call you. The paradox here is delicious. In letting go of your attachment to a particular form, you don't lose yourself. You find yourself as formless awareness, as the very ground of being. In accepting the continuous little deaths that make up your existence, you discover that which in you never dies, not because it's immortal in time, but because it's prior to time altogether. This is what Jesus meant when he said, "Whoever tries to keep their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life will preserve it." Not a promise of afterlife, but a pointing to the liberation that comes from letting go of the desperate attempt to maintain a separate self. And this liberation isn't just freedom from the fear of death, it's freedom to live fully, wholeheartedly, with nothing held back. Because when you're no longer defending a position, you're free to flow with life as it presents itself. When you're no longer trying to avoid small deaths, you can embrace the fullness of life. Think of how much energy we expend trying to maintain our separateness, trying to prove that we exist as independent entities. What might become possible if we redirected that energy toward creative expression, toward compassion, toward the simple joy of being? This is what lies beyond the veil, not some mystical realm after death, but the immediate direct recognition of your inseparability from the whole fabric of existence. Not an achievement to be gained in the future, but a reality to be recognized here and now. So I invite you to consider, what would it mean to live as if you've already died? Not in a morbid sense, but in the sense of having let go of the illusion of separation. What would it mean to embrace your nature as a verb rather than a noun, as a process rather than a thing? Because the most profound truth may be this: you don't have to wait for physical death to discover what lies beyond the apparent separation.
Let's continue on and close this out in the next part of this conversation. Let's consider, as we move into the last part of Mr. Watts' statement about you're already dead. And keep, if you can, as we close out this series, it's not about a final death. It's about the constant regeneration, not just of your body, not just of your cells, not just of your ideas or thoughts. They're not yours. But the regeneration of your perspective on the urgency of the moments I've been mentioning to you in the 820 Enterprise. I want to change your perspective on this present moment and treat it just like Mr. Watts has stated. Every moment, every day, we are dying. Every moment, every day, we are living. Don't see that as two separate entities. See that as part of the process. Another process model for life. Maybe I should say resilience. Process models for love. Stay present. Stay current. No matter where you are in this world, please remember and tell somebody, hey, it's always 820.